being honest and willing to recognize what natural gifts you might have, and everyone has those gifts one way or another. Every human being, because we're all unique and different in our own way. To the extent that they can be identified and utilized in a way that brings comfort and satisfaction to the person and those around them, those whom they love and who love them.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick Rodell. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Dr. Terry Rogers. Terry is a graduate of Dartmouth College and Cornell University Medical College. He completed his training in internal medicine, pulmonary diseases, and critical care medicine at the University of Washington. He is board certified in these specialties and also holds a certificate in Biomedical Ethics. After 15 years of practice in Seattle, during which time he was the director of respiratory and critical care at the Swedish Hospital Medical Center, he joined King County Medical Blue Shield, now Regence Blue Shield, first as senior medical officer, then as chief operating officer. He has retired as medical director of Lakeside-Milam Recovery Centers and was previously chief executive officer of the Foundation for Healthcare Quality in Seattle. Dr. Rogers was also a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Washington. He still works part-time seeing patients at the Recovery Center. Other activities include portrait photography, playing the saxophone in a traditional jazz band, walking his dog Jenny, rebuilding his old MG, and being a pest to his lovely wife, Karin. Hey, Terry, how are you?
I am doing well, thanks. I hardly recognize that person that you described.
I know bios are very interesting.
They are.
Yeah, I do like to read them in the beginning. I guess when you write a bio, it can force you to kind of think about a lot of your accomplishments and activities. But at the beginning, I still like to ask people to introduce themselves for that reason.
Yeah.
So can you introduce yourself in another way that works best for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, the details have already been presented. I'm the youngest of four, grew up in a musical family and an education-focused family, first in New Hampshire, and then we moved to New Jersey when I was in third grade. And still keep in touch with a handful of my high school classmates, actually. It was an interesting, informative time, way before the internet or television, for us anyway. And so the relationships you forged at that time had just kind of a little different cast to them and were quite meaningful. Went on to medical school, training in Seattle, a couple of years in the Air Force as a flight surgeon. I remember when I graduated from medical school, it was in 1966. All male medical school graduates were obligated to go into service at that time because of Vietnam. So I actually enjoyed the Air Force. It was quite a good experience. Yeah, and the rest you pretty much know. I loved my work as a critical care and pulmonary doc at Swedish, and when the opportunity came to work in basically the finance reimbursement side of medicine, we were a pretty big outfit locally, and at that time I was pretty much responsible for spending between $5 and $6 million a day on healthcare, and took that responsibility quite seriously. You know, an insurance company is a repository for the community's money, and the responsibility of someone in charge of spending it is to spend that in a rational and appropriate manner. So that was an interesting time. I've worked in the elder care field, as you know, ran a foundation for healthcare quality, and just kind of by accident fell into the work I have done in the past 25 years in the field of addiction medicine. I was asked to do a bit of consulting way back when. I was offered the job of medical director, and I turned it down. But they were pretty persuasive, so I ended up taking a job. It was part-time. It was one of those part-time pay, full-time responsibility jobs. But it's been very rewarding over the years. And although I'm no longer the medical director, I still see patients a few days each month, and I just worked the last 2 days, and am fascinated by the stories, and any guidance or support that I can offer along with the other team members who are addressing this pretty impressive disease that affects so many people in our country. So there we are.
Nice, nice. So you've spent your life in service in some capacity in
Yeah,
medicine.
it's an interesting concept. When you read, I used to do interview applicants to medical school, and they all say, "I just want to help the community. I just want to be of service, whatever." Not all of them turn out to actually do that. But I actually don't think of it that way. It's a two-way street, and to have the listening and presence capability that will allow someone who really is a stranger to me to sort of open up who they are, what's gone on in their life, may or may not be their deepest, darkest secrets. But the fact is, it's a pretty sacred space. And so, yeah, is it service? Yes, but it's also a gift. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe the photography I do. It's the same thing. It's like, look, I don't know in detail many of the people whose portrait I take, but there's something about that moment that allows them to be natural and to be who they are, to capture. I mean, one of the nicest compliments I can get as a photographer is when someone who knows that person says to me, "You captured exactly who they are." So that's kind of my thought about the service aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. I hear that. Um, yeah, it's an interesting perspective that you have on doing this type of work, service work. But I can see that it's definitely a gift to be able to listen and witness for a person and hold that space for them to reveal themselves to you. That definitely requires something other than just a desire to serve. If it's something you need to cultivate that skill, or is a skill that you naturally have to be able to hold that space for people.
That's a great question. I know that you have interviewed my good friend, Dr. John Scherer, who I've known for 25 plus years. And John is exceptionally gifted in this space about being present for people and allowing them, inviting them, just by his presence, to be more authentic in the room and with themselves. And when I point that out to him, it's like, well, I don't know what I do. It's not really special. But when someone has a gift that comes naturally to them, that they don't have to boot up in the morning, they don't have to contrive, it's very difficult for them to understand how important that is. I have my lovely bride is in fact lovely, and part of the reason she's so lovely is she doesn't know how lovely she is. She doesn't have to work. She doesn't have to work at it, right? And so the reason to bring that up, Broderick, is there's something about me that allows people to do that. And one of my challenges actually has been to not say, "Oh shucks, I don't know what it is, whatever," but to actually own it. And that for those who have gifts that just come naturally, it's very difficult for them to understand how powerful they can be. And if you downplay it, it's like putting a lid on the basket where your candle is inside. Say, well, why not take the lid off and let that shine a little bit? My late son was a very gifted artist, and his sister, who can't draw a straight line, would say to him, "Luke, how do you do that as you draw something?" And Luke would say, "I don't know. I just do it. I just do it." So,
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, we all come here with something, and it's a part of who we are, part of the
right,
personality, shapes our personality, our idea of ourselves. It's very
yeah.
interesting. So, from the very beginning, I like to ask. And I'm thinking that maybe some that'll come up as we go further in this conversation. What does living well mean to you? And then we'll unpack it for the rest of this for the rest of our time together.
Well, in part, it's related to what I just said about being honest and willing to recognize what natural gifts you might have, and everyone has those gifts one way or another. Every human being, because we're all unique and different in our own way. To the extent that they can be identified and utilized in a way that brings comfort and satisfaction to the person and those around them, those whom they love and who love them. I think that for me is the essence of living well. There's really a requirement for honesty, and willingness to accept and identify what those gifts might be.
Yeah, that's interesting because even Aristotle suggested that to live a good life, there are some things that we come here with. Now he totally worded this slightly different. Some would say that Aristotle was an elitist, but putting that aside, there are things that we come here with, and that's going to influence our capacity to live a good life. And I love how you're saying, like, well, we all have gifts, we all have talents, and being honest with ourselves about what those gifts and talents are, and trying to find out what that gift and talent is, and using those gifts and talents as our vocation, as a way of serving the world, a way of bringing and serving others with those gifts and talents that we have. It's almost like, I mean, this is my interpretation. It's almost like it's our responsibility to nurture and support our gifts and talents because we have them for a reason, and they can be used as a tool to serve others, to build bridges, to build connections, things of that nature. Does that make sense to you? Or
Yep. No, that's exactly what I was saying. Let me give you a
yeah,
little example of recognition, because if you have natural characteristics that don't require any obvious work on your part to display them, to manifest them, then you're probably not going to recognize that you have them. So I was attending a session of some leaders within the health system a number of months ago, and we did a little exercise where, and I can't remember the exact details, but we had to write down some details about ourselves that we saw in ourselves, and some details about someone else that you were partnered with. And when it came time for me to admit what I thought some of my characteristics were, they were like, well, perceptive, supportive, whatever. And the person who actually wrote down something about me still stuns me. It's like, I've known this guy for what, 2 hours, maybe max. He's a physician from the California. And the words he used were gentle kindness. And I just said, what? Where did that go? I mean, in honesty, if you had asked me to list 100 characteristics that I saw in myself, I doubt very much if I would have come up with gentle kindness.
Mm.
Uh, it was obviously a powerful experience, but just thinking about that is, what if we could do that with each other?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I say to my wife, um, I call her girl, she calls me boy. We're very, very, very sophisticated. I said, girl, you're just a most beautiful person. She said, oh no, I'm just a regular old person. So my task has been for the last, we've been together 40 years. My task is to just, just embrace that, own it,
Mm-hmm.
because your light will shine brighter in the world. You will get more feedback. You will get
Mm.
more satisfaction. You'll get more living wellness in the world. I mean, other people see it with her, but it's so difficult for some individuals to recognize um, and see how uniquely capable and powerful they are.
Mm. Yeah, it's very interesting that you brought that up. I am currently reading David Brooks' book, How to Know a Person.
Ah,
And this is one of the things that he's talking about, that he's sharing about being
yeah,
able to see another person and being able to feel into another person and I'm using my language here, but to witness them and to be able to share with them what their gifts and talents are. How wonderful that is for uh, you to do that for another person, and also how it helps us connect. It helps us build bridges. It helps us come to understand something about ourselves.
right.
It helps us understand that community is important, because I don't necessarily see all the characteristics of myself, good or bad, the positive or negative aspects of myself. Being
Right.
in community and having someone shine the light on those characteristics that I have, it's a beautiful thing. And then it kind of puts me in a situation where, oh, I didn't recognize that I had that. How can I enhance that more? How can I apply that to whatever my profession is?
Right.
Maybe I recognize again. Now, maybe I recognize this. I have this gift and talent. Maybe that could be central to my vocation. What I choose to do in the world, how I tend to choose to show up in the world. And I'm with you on that. And like you say, that ultimately enhances whatever it may look like. That ultimately enhances our capacity to live well.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So can you say more about the importance of um, community
Ah,
and the role that community and plays in this integration with our gifts and talents, if you want to stay with that theme, or just community in general?
yeah. Well, you've hit on a subject that's dear to my heart. So, I've had the opportunity to talk a little bit about community in various settings. Um, for instance, at a reflection at the start of a board meeting, or even with larger groups. In fact, I did this at our church a couple of years ago when the rector, who was a good friend, said, "Terry, I want to talk a little bit about why you go to church." And so I approached it this way, and it has to do with community, really. It's what it boils down to. So the derivation of the word community is two-part. Com is a comes from the Latin. It's like with or together, right? In munity, or it is also from the Latin via the French, muniere, which means duty. So when you talk about this, it's like we have this together duty. And the harsh reality is that if there's more than one person in the room, you have a community.
Mm-hmm.
You may not want that community. You may not want that the discussion is happening. So the next step in that is, well, how can you identify this? Because that may not just be enough. And you think about how we actually interact within a community. And of course, there are both verbal and nonverbal characteristics of how we communicate. But the most likely is oral communication, which is fine if we all speak the same language. But what happens if we don't speak the same language? Is there a way we can, I'll say this, and it may not be entirely accurate, is there a way we can vibrate together to have some common attachment that doesn't rely on our unique language? And I'm thinking about, because there are 6,000 different language dialects in this world. One of the ways so we use words. Words are sounds. They have, we have percussive sounds and sibilant sounds and vowel sounds and whatever. But another way to join together with sound is in the field of music, because we all can make a sound, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Our traditional Western music is based on a tonic scale that we all know from The Sound of Music. Do, a deer, a female deer, Ray, a drop of golden sun. That's what is the basis of almost all the music that we hear. A simpler version of that scale is actually what they call a pentatonic scale. It doesn't have a fourth, it doesn't have a seventh. So it goes do, re, mi, sol, la, do, and there's only 5 notes in it. And so what I asked the group to do, this is maybe more than you wanted to hear, but this is what it is about community. So I'll ask in the group, I'll warn them at the beginning, this is a participation reflection. And if you're embarrassed about what I'm asking, just close your eyes, because then you won't see what people's reactions are. But they're going to be feeling the same way. Is I'll ask them to sing a note, and just to follow me, You see where we're going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing Grace,
Yeah.
right? Pentatonic scale. There's only 5 notes, and at the end of that, there's this silence. I said, even if you know the words, I don't want to hear the words. What I want to hear is your unique contribution. That song is one of the world's most popular. It's estimated that it is played, heard, sung, whatever, some 10 million times a year. But it has never been heard exactly like what you just did, because each of you individually is part of the community that actually made that sound.
Yes.
So if you think that your voice is not important in the community, I would hope I can dispel that notion, because in fact, it's very important to make the uniqueness of this community that we find ourselves in at this moment. It's pretty telling, actually.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Terry. I feel you on that, because I grew up Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
And in the Southeast. And I just feel like I was blessed to experience that Southern Baptist singing in my youth, and the praise, and it's hard to explain. You have to experience it, and it's not quite like it used to be there, unfortunately.
But it's probably got a little commercialized in a way.
Well, yeah,
maybe lacked the spontaneity, lacked the genuineness of what you experienced growing up. right?
Yeah, what I experienced were a lot more raw,
Yeah.
and contemporary things change. I get it, but there's this rawness, and the thing I love most, yeah, the message at that time was interesting, but what I love most then, and what I still love today when I reflect on it, is what you're speaking about. It's the community around music,
Mm-hmm.
around connecting to something, that each person in that community had a responsibility. It's like a duty to make something beautiful in the singing. They didn't necessarily think about it in that context, but in order to make something beautiful like that to happen, there had to be some cooperation, and everyone took a responsibility who participated in making that possible, took upon themselves to make that connection, to make those bridges. Um, and every time, every church service was different, unique, and would never be repeated again.
Right.
The music, everyone's bringing their emotions, they're bringing everything to the table. And when you're singing those songs, man, it's just, I can literally still feel them. I find myself humming along when I'm doing work, or
Yep.
singing some of these old songs, or calling my family members, can you tell me what this song is? And they get all excited because they don't really sing them that much anymore. Um, and it brings back joy to all of us. That feeling uh, that comes when we participated in those, and the remembrance of that feeling comes back when we reflect on those times, those moments when we spent that time together in community. I do think that it is such an important part to living well, as being in community, connecting with others. And particularly, I want to come back to a lot of what you said earlier about our gifts and talents, especially when we are able to bring our gifts and talents to the table, and we really nurture and support them, and we have a community that nurtures and supports our gifts and talents. I mean, it just creates a beautiful world. It enhances the capacity for human flourishing and goodness in the world, as a result of that connection, that resonance, particularly when we're bringing our gifts and talents on board, and we're
Yeah.
encouraged to do so. Um,
We have a together duty. I just love that
yeah.
interpretation, that the basis for the word community.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, if there's more than one person in the room, you have a community,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned in my short bio that I'm a musician and have led a traditional Dixieland jazz band for the last. We actually just had our 40th birthday, as a
Oh
matter of fact.
wow.
Three of the guys that I play with were originals, so I've been playing with them for 40 years. We were we've lost four of our members over the years, and when we started, and for the majority of those years, we were six physicians and a marine engineer who played the tuba. We couldn't find a physician who played the tuba, so we let this guy in. He's married to a nurse who used to be a nun, so we figured that was close enough, right? But the fact is that men in general and physicians specifically aren't necessarily gifted in displaying intimacy.
Yeah.
And yet this was a vehicle. I considered it really as a free floating musical group therapy session for all the time we were together. When you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
the life events that occurred, births, deaths, weddings, job changes, loss of spouse, loss of kids, whatever. It was it remained, and to a certain extent still is, a vehicle for seven diverse people to become attached in ways that I don't think could be replicated in other ways, like sitting down and playing poker once a week or whatever. There's something about, I think it's even more true with vocal music, because you don't have anything there's nothing in front of you like a horn that you can kind of hide behind or whatever. But nonetheless, you get to learn a lot about the other people and about yourself. And one thing I have learned is how important silence is in music, particularly when you're playing with other people.
Mm.
They're telling you something. They may be doing it in ways that they don't even understand, but it's very telling. I'm sitting here looking at a picture of our original crew, and it has been and has remained a really important and powerful part of what I would consider living well. Um, none of us are supremely gifted musicians, but one thing you learn is you play within the envelope that you have been given, and that's enough. And then sometimes it's spectacular, but it's enough. It's been a cool thing.
That's so beautiful. Yes. I say yes, 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 yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, when we connect like that, it is therapeutic. Um, it's almost like we're tapping in, we're all linking into. I think it's almost like we're all connected by that silence when we're participating in music. You're right, especially with vocal. You don't have that
right.
distraction of the instrument. Um, but it's almost like we're connected to the silence, and we're playing with these sounds together. We're coordinating together with these sounds around silence. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Um, Around the spaces in between those sounds, and we're figuring out how to do that together to create this melody, to create something that moves us in some capacity. Sometimes I don't think we quite understand the power of doing that and what it
Yeah,
is doing to us by doing that, because you have to listen. You have to listen. You have to tune in to the others. You have to really tune into yourself. You're present. You're feeling the music. I think music is feeling. It's all about the feeling. And yeah, that's good. That
mm,
feels good.
yeah,
That's an important aspect of the good life. And I think
yeah,
we take that away with us.
yeah,
You know, I never forget, like, I mean, I do play capoeira now. Capoeira is this Brazilian dance martial art, and
yeah,
music is an important piece of it. We sing, play instruments. That feeling that you feel afterwards, what we call, where we actually do the ritual of capoeira, we call it a roda. And during it, it feels great, absolutely, but you can really feel it right afterwards. It's that feeling I used to get when I would leave church, or
yeah,
right at the end of the service. You got this, you're just buzzing.
yeah,
You're like, what is this feeling? It's like, that's it. This is the good that we are seeking, that we can potentially seek.
yeah,
And my thing is, like, how do we be intentional about increasing the likelihood of having that type of experience, that feeling um, in life? And I think, again, I love that you brought that up. That's why I keep coming back to it. This idea of nurturing and supporting whatever gifts and talents that we may have. And I wish we lived in a culture where where we're encouraged to find that gift and talent, or through the educational system, it's such that it helps us realize and come to understand what that gift and talent is. Then we're encouraged to nurture it, and then imagine the power that comes from a person, their capacity to act, that comes from a person who's been encouraged to bring their gifts and talent inside of a community. Um, I think it's just such a great thing.
I'm just thinking about a conversation we had a number of years ago about this issue of uniqueness. So we were playing a gig down in Olympia at their jazz society one Sunday afternoon, And the drummer we had that day was not our usual drummer. It was a guy who would sit in as necessary. He was an old British guy, and Maurice Quine, bless his soul. So we were sitting at break. We were sitting around a table, and I said to the table, I said, if you could play like anybody else in this idiom, if you could play trumpet like or trombone like somebody else, who would it be? And a couple people said something, and I said, well, there's this guy who plays for the New Black Eagles out of Boston who's just phenomenal. I'd love to be able to play like him. And Maurice looked at me, he said, why would you want to play like anybody else? He said, what you do and how you play is who you are. Why would you want to give that up to somebody else?
Oh, beautiful.
I said, well, I like just to have a little more skill, a little more. He said, then practice. But don't wish you were like somebody else. This is your voice. This is who you are.
Oh, what a powerful lesson for life, huh?
Yeah, it's like, right? Why do you want to be like him? It's crazy.
You said something else about that music thing too, tying into that when you said that oh well, none of us are like super great musicians, but we do what we can within the boundaries of what we have available to us. That's
Exactly.
really beautiful. And the fact that you all can make beautiful music together and have a beautiful experience doing the best you can with what you have, well,
Right.
it's another powerful lesson for living a good life.
Yeah.
All we can do is do the best we can with what we have. And if we want to do better at something, we just practice.
Yeah.
We'll practice
And
cultivating the
right. And
talent.
you may or may not get better.
Right.
No, it's been fun. It's been really quite a journey. And you connect with people in ways that I don't think you can really replicate elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there's an importance to identify that, to honor it, and respect it. I mean, I think about the practice of medicine. When I see or hear some of my colleagues making some disparaging comments about, well, it ain't like it used to be, and it's too much trouble, and it's this, that, and I said, wait a minute, stop, stop right there. I said, what you have is an opportunity to be with / connect with another human being in a way that simply cannot be replicated in any other fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You have a patient or a person, a human being in front of you who is literally and figuratively naked before you. And if you can't respect, honor, and embrace that, then you are missing a huge part of this field we call medicine. Don't get tied up with the economics or the fact that you're a personnel or there's a lack of this or whatever. Because in that moment, when you're with that patient, there is nothing more sacred. There is nothing more meaningful. And it should be both parties. And if you're missing that, you're wasting a real opportunity.
Mm. Well, another powerful lesson for life right there, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are happening, I'm thinking about kids and they don't say to you, Dad, I want to sit down and talk to you about something serious. You have to listen carefully because the question will come out in the context of something that's totally different from what you expect. A number of years ago, my older daughter, who's now 56. So when I say it was a number of years ago, it was. She was maybe 13 at the time. And I'll never forget the scene. We were driving across the higher plains of Central Oregon. We're going to Bend to go skiing. And it was a crystal clear night. The moon was out, shining on the snow. And out of the back seat, my daughter says to me, Dad, and I said, yes, Cynthia, what's up? She said, what would you do if I got pregnant? She's 13. And I said, well, first of all, I'm honored that you'd ask me that question. Um, she said, would you get mad and kick me out of the house? I said, no, I would do anything I could to support you. But the real question is not what I would do if you got pregnant. The real question is, what would you do if you got pregnant? It's your body, your baby, your whatever. You'd have to figure out what's the best thing for you. She said, oh, and that was it. I mean, it just sort of came out of the blue. And you could miss those moments if you're not listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're driving kids. When I used to pick up the boys from school and drive home, and after about a mile, they'd forget that I was there. And then they'd start having these conversations about what was going on at school, this kid there, this way there, whatever. It was fascinating to hear when you're just a little fly on the wall. But you got to keep your ears open for it. It's just the chances are few and far between. Interesting.
It's this common thing that's coming up for you around connecting deeply
Huh?
and the sacredness of connecting deeply with another person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you say a little more about that? And because that's come up. Yeah, you keep bringing that up.
I don't think about that. I don't get up each morning and say, well, today I'm going to connect deeply. I mean, if you were to listen to the conversation between my wife and me, you would say, what is wrong with those people? I mean, and I often say to her, do you think other marriages are like this? And she said, oh, no. So I'll take you back to when we first started dating. There was something about Karin which led her to basically ignore all my fluff and bullshit. It went right on fire, like this. It's like, whatever. And there's a deeply implied message. In other words, she knew exactly how to ignore me. And there's a deeply implied message in that, which is, you can do all this fluff and BS and yappiness if you want. She says, but when you deal with me, bring your real self. Okay, I got it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't, someone asked me the other day, what's the most powerful characteristic of a requirement for communication, which of course brings us back to together duty, because that's what it is. It's commune, right? And I said, listening. It's just what it is. So my days now, when I see patients, I told you, just worked the last 2 days, and Monday was busy. I ended up seeing 24 different patients on Monday, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they're not 2-minute visits. They come in and say, doctor, you have time? Well, what else do I have? Yeah, I got time. And more than one of them said when they left, thanks, I feel better. Thank you for listening. Years ago, when I came to Seattle to start my practice of medicine, I was the first basically modernly trained physician in pulmonary medicine, which was never really a specialty other than in the past to take care of tuberculosis. I mean, tuberculosis was a huge issue for this country, for the world, actually, and in a way still is. Up until so late 50s, early 60s, when medication finally became available. One of my first rotations as a resident actually was at a sanitarium here in Seattle, which at one point in its heyday had 1,500 patients in it. It was this huge place. And the average length of stay for tuberculosis in the pre-medicine days was 2 years. you went into the hospital and you were going to stay because you'd still have tuberculosis. It's actually what kind of got me interested in lung disease. So when I came into practice, I was on the staff in Seattle of 5 different hospitals at the same time. And I walked into the doctor's room, where they serve coffee, donuts, and bullshit on a regular basis with the docs there. And someone asked me about how my night was or whatever. And I said, oh, my damn, I just got called a bunch of times. And there was a senior physician who he looked sort of like Jackie Gleason. He was a big fella. His name was John T. Wittgenstein, J.T. Wittgenstein. And he put his arm around me, took me over the corner. He says, Terry, don't ever complain about someone reaching out to you because that's really what they're after. They want you. Any fool can write a prescription or do an operation. But if they reach out to you, you take care of that. You honor that. You respect it. Okay? Got it. Got it, JT. Thanks. And that's where for me the pleasure comes from, is listening to these people's stories. And you never know. You absolutely never know what the impact of something you might say is in the moment. One little thing. So here's my take about addiction. You didn't ask, I'm going to tell you anyway.
No, go for it.
As a lung doctor, I used to ask people, do they smoke? Yes, I smoke. And occasionally they'd say, no, I don't smoke. I said, do you ever smoke? Yes. Well, how'd you quit? And there are 2 factions of people who quit smoking. There's one which is scary. I said, when did you quit? And they said 3 weeks ago. And then they're coming in to see me as a lung doctor. It's like they knew something was wrong, right? And invariably they'd have lung cancer or something advanced. But the other faction of people managed to quit because they'd had enough. Oh, I bought a new suit and I lit up a cigarette and the ash fell on my pants and built a hole in it. And I said, this is off. I'd throw them out. Or they'd wake up one morning and said, that's it, I'm done. And they'd keep a pack of cigarettes in their pocket for a year and never reach for one and then throw them out. The issue that I'm hoping to identify is if there's something that goes on in the brain, whereas I'm a smoker, click, I'm a non-smoker. And it's that click, which is what happens with any addiction, whether it's alcohol or fentanyl or opiates of any type or whatever. I'm a user, I'm a drinker, click, I'm not doing this anymore. In a treatment program such as ours, we don't have any access to that click. And I don't have it. And consciously, the person probably doesn't have it either. And if we could identify that click moment, we'd get the Nobel Peace Prize. But it happens. And when it happens, it's really holy. You never know what one thing you say might actually lead them closer to that click. And they may never know either. But it's really just a wondrous thing to see it happen. It's just really, really quite remarkable. Yeah, so getting back to it, it's like the gift that I am given on a daily basis to hear people's stories is really remarkable. There's a wonderful book that I'm not finished. It's called Reverence, how we have lost reverence for many of the seemingly innocuous, unimportant things of the day, when in fact there's an importance to virtually everything we do. And we've lost that. And so when I say I have reverence for that, and I have reverence for the moments when people are willing to share visually who they are that I can capture with my camera, man, that is so rewarding to me. And you asked about living well. That's kind of the mana, the food that feeds my soul. It's like, yeah, I'm given that gift. I'm going to use it. Other people will benefit from it, but I benefit from it a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And you've seen some of the pictures, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's
really
amazing.
interesting to me because if you could take 10 different photographers and give them that same subject serially to have them shoot, you'd get 10 different versions of that person. So in a way, um, if you want to know anything about me, look at the pictures that I take. Yeah, it's a picture of someone else, but there's a lot of me in that picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's related to your capacity to listen. You're not verbally listening, but you'll be your
There,
capacity to witness.
there's something about it, that moment when I love it when people say to me, "Oh, I'm not going to have my picture taken because I take a crappy picture." And I say to them, "Well, that's interesting to hear, but the reality is that you don't take the picture. I take the picture, and I'm really good at what I do."
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mostly it relaxes them and say, "Oh, okay, we'll do this or whatever." I have one other trick that I do is I'll take pictures from the right side and from the left side of their face and then have them face me directly. And I'll ask them to sit up and lean forward toward me a little bit, drop your chin a little bit. Now, do me a favor, Joe, and just close your eyes for me for a moment. Let your face relax. So they'll do that. And I say, okay, now, at this point, I want you to do nothing but open your eyes, look directly at the lens. Don't move anything else. They'll do that. And then I'll say, name's Joe. So I'll say, oh, that's the don't screw with Joe look, right? And invariably it does what you just did, which is this little smile with this sort of natural sort of whatever. And it's the picture after that or after that, which is the one that actually captures who they are. It's really pretty cool to watch that happen.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, they have other tricks like, so who's your high school honey? What was his or her name? And what would you do if they walked in right now? Would you that always gets some sort of reaction. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, anyway, we all have our own approaches, but I'm blessed to be able to offer that service and to I'm not often there when they actually see their pictures. I am sometimes, and when I am, it's like, oh my God, I had no idea.
Mm.
Tears, silence. Usually, it's the silence which is telling, which is
Mm.
mm,
Yeah, it appears that like for you that those doing what you love, I'm going to say that maybe
yeah, I
choose different
do.
words, doing what you love and experiencing moments of wonder and awe
Yeah,
when you capture an image or when you're witnessing another person, deeply listening to them,
yeah,
be it you, your wife, be it a patient. But capturing those moments of awe and wonder is such an important piece of the living well puzzle. Um,
yes. And if you had told me 40 years ago that I'd spend the last 25 years of my professional existence in drug and alcohol treatment, I would have told you you're full of poop. There's no way I was going to be doing that. But we end up in places where um, to which we are drawn in ways that sometimes we don't begin to understand.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I actually didn't then, and I don't think I do it now out of any overt, identified kind of, oh yeah, I must do this. This is what I get up each morning to do. It's more natural and uncontrived than that. And the fact of the matter is, Broderick, is that there is nobody you know or who you've ever met whose lives have not been impacted by drug or alcohol use.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to think of it as, oh, it's those people over there. No, it's not those people. It's the people you see every day. It's the
Mm-hmm.
people you work with. It's the people in your family. It's the people you go to church with. It's the people, whatever. It's it's a stunning issue, and particularly with alcohol, which is a flat out toxic poison. It's
Mm-hmm.
so ubiquitous. It's so common. You know,
Yeah.
you can't go into any store without seeing racks and racks of. I was down picking up a prescription at a grocery store the other day, and directly across from the pharmacy, an aisle away, are six chock full aisles of wine and beer and whatever. I said, it's a little ironic you guys are giving medication out to counteract the effects of the poison across the way. Anyway, it's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? It's so funny. I went to an event. I went to a gathering at someone's house, and I quit drinking a long time ago, and and there's an older gentleman. He kept joking with me. I know he was joking, but he's like, "What planet are you from?" He's
Yeah,
like, "Why are you not like really?" And they kept offering me like, "You sure you don't want anything to drink?" I'm like, "No, I'm 100% sure. I don't want anything to drink. I'm not saying anything wrong with you doing it. It's just that
yeah,
I have no desire to do it. I've seen alcoholism up close with my
yeah,
father, and that's just not a fun thing. And I don't know, just there's other aspects of it too, the toxicity of it, where I'm like,
yeah,
there's other drugs out there. I don't need that. I prefer caffeine right now, and I don't even want too much of that. um, but yeah, this has been great. I think I love how I know I keep pulling out these words based on what you said. I think a lot of what you're saying is just such important life lessons. Listening deeply, finding your gift and talent. Not necessarily you don't need to be stressed about finding it, but just listening. And
owning
I
it.
think owning it, yeah. And that owning requires so you're speaking of listening to others when you're playing music, listening to others when you're in your spouse or people you're close to in conversation, listening to other people's conversation, like listen to your kids in the car. Um, your daughter asking you that question, probably, I don't know, probably because she saw a friend or somebody at
Yeah, I
school that
know.
got something crazy happened to them in their home. And she's like, well, let me ask my dad. And, she
Yeah,
probably felt compelled to ask you because she's like, well, he'll listen. She probably felt that energy of
yeah,
your capacity to listen and to be present and to be non-judgmental in that listening. But and then a piece of the of finding your gift and talent requires listening to our own selves,
yeah,
being able to non-judgmentally. When I say non-judgmentally, we always make a judgment, folks. So discernment is important. I'm not saying don't make any analysis or judgment. What I mean by non-judgmentally is not trying to make it right or wrong, but just
right.
listening from that place of equanimity and just be present with ourselves. I think things are revealed to us. Our gifts, our talents are revealed to us. You moving into addiction treatment probably was acquired a bit of listening to yourself, to the opportunities that came before you. You're like, oh, this feels like the right thing for me to be doing right now. I never would have imagined me doing this, but okay, let
Here I
me
am.
go. Here I
Let
am. Let's see
let's
what
do it.
happens.
Yeah.
Big lesson for life right there. A really big lesson for life.
Part of the almost all of the employees at our facility are in recovery. Not all of them, but almost all of them. And so they're there not because they just were looking for a job and this one happened to be available. They're there because there's something about themselves that drew them to that work.
Mm-hmm.
Either gratefulness of having been, quote, rescued or been in treatment in the past or whatever. And there's something so naturally uncontrived about working in an atmosphere where people are drawn to that work by a natural and oftentimes powerful desire to be exactly where they are. You know, one of the things I loved about running an intensive care unit is that there's no room for bullshit in an ICU. There's no phonies in an ICU. You are on your toes, and the people who are drawn to that work, I just love working with them. In fact, still stay in touch with some of the people that I worked with in that environment, and that's kind of how it is in the field of addiction medicine. Also, is that we've heard it all before. It's all bullshit, right? We have pretty good evaluation meter for what the truth is and what the truth isn't.
Yeah.
And so it's great to work with those folks. It really is. So, yeah.
Look at you, another good lesson, man. You're bringing it out. You're from your wife. Like, look here, you can do all the bullshit you want, but I want you to bring your real self. In,
Yeah.
in the ICU, we don't have time for the bullshit. Be
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Another big lesson for life, and those are really important for living a good life,
Yeah.
whatever that means, whatever that looks. I don't think you can confine living, a good life or living well or life well lived into some box. But
Yeah.
there are these things, like these things that you're suggesting. You're not being, be real, listen deeply to yourself and others,
Yeah.
connect with others in community, um, find some joy, find a sense of peace that you get when you're playing music, and joy when you're playing music, for
Yeah.
instance. All of these different things are conducive to a life well lived.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really awesome that you've brought out a lot of those different pieces of the puzzle that I personally think that is an important part of the equation.
So what I would not say at this point is, "Oh shucks, Broderick, it was really nothing." It's like
Great.
when you compliment your date on lovely dress, and they say, "Oh, it's really this old rag." No, how about saying, "Thank you, it's one of my favorite dresses. Thank you." It's the same deal, right?
Yeah,
We are
that's
so reluctant to own our unique skills,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and the world is not a better place because of it.
yeah,
Own it, own it, use it.
yeah. That's
So
beautiful. That's a big lesson for me, actually, Terry.
yeah,
I because there's this part aspect of me that just want. I used to, if people know me, who know me really closely, my partner, she stays on me about this. When people compliment me on certain things, I get uncomfortable, because I think there's some part of me that fears arrogance, that fears that I'll take, because it really bothers me. People bother me who are so self-absorbed, and I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. The
I get it. I get
narcissism,
it.
and I think I fear that narcissism. But at the same time, I'm not doing myself any justice by not owning and accepting these qualities that I get complimented on, and I'm still learning how to do that. And I think this is a lesson for me personally today, that you're reminding me again. Like, yeah, just own it, own it. You don't have to be arrogant. Don't be an arrogant asshole. Just own what feels right. You don't have to be arrogant for owning
Right, right.
and
Well,
accepting
it's sort of
a
like when I
compliment.
started off. I told you about this guy looked at me and described me as being gentle kindness. It's like, are you talking about the same guy? It's like, really? And that it still is a source of wonder. With respect to what you just said, though, I think here's my take on it. There are two kinds of phonies. You and I both really react adversely to the person who thinks of themselves far more highly than any objective evaluation would support.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But what's just as damaging is the phony who won't embrace what their skills and talents are. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just a regular human being. Oh, I'm not pretty. Oh, I'm not this. Bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Bullshit. So if you have the stuff, be be courageous enough to embrace who you really are,
Oh, yeah. Big lesson.
because you and the world around you will benefit from it.
Oh man, we're coming to a close, and that is just great right there. I mean, there's so many avenues that we could have explored. I just love how it played out. I mean, these are creative conversations. They're playful conversations.
Yeah.
It's like we're playing music together
Yeah.
when we're having these types of conversations. So, folks, I don't really have a plan other than like letting the conversation go where it goes and try to unpack some of these ideas as we go along. And I have a one final question
Yeah.
to ask, and that's: are there any thoughts you would like to leave with the audience? It could be anything, question, anything.
No, nothing other than what I've already said. I think, who was it? Was it Mandela that said that the greatest danger is not displaying and using who you really are? Not in something like that. It's I'm paraphrasing it, but we've already talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just love yourself. You are unique. You are a very special human being. Virtually everyone is. When I talk to patients in this setting of drug use, it's really quite clear to me that every person's version of this disease is unique to themselves. And therefore, it's very challenging, very unhelpful to compare yourself to another patient because you'll say, oh, well, I'm not drinking as much as that person, or I didn't lose my job, or I didn't go get a DUI or whatever. It's completely irrelevant. It's what it's doing to you that counts. And it's very challenging, but it's really a distillate of what we were talking about, is being honest with yourself, being brutally honest with yourself about what's going on in your life that has led you to this particular spot, and recognize that your version may not be like somebody else's, but for you it's really, really important. I think the key to success for treatment of this disease is humility.
Hmm.
John Scherer has a saying I think he got from his grandfather was, we're just all regular people just trying to go to the post office. It's like we're all in this together in a way. We
Yeah.
cover ourselves with trappings of one thing after another, but we're just trying to get to the post office. And yeah, so there we are.
Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Terry.
It's been a good conversation. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you too. This has been great, and
Okay.
looking forward to more
Yeah.
offline at some point.
All right. You take care.
You too.
All right. Thanks, Broderick. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.